The Keltharian Empire had never tasted defeat. For 3,000 years, they had carved their way through the galaxy, their biomechanical ships destroying everything in their path. Their neural networks, connected to every warrior through cybernetic implants, made their reactions instantaneous, their strategies perfect, their victories absolute. They had cleansed entire sectors of what they deemed lesser species, their philosophy simple: evolve or perish. They never expected humanity to show them the true meaning of evolution. The Keltharian fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, their massive ships casting shadows across Saturn's rings. Supreme Commander Vexthor stood on his command deck, his cybernetic eyes scanning the tactical displays. His metallic tendrils, extensions of his enhanced nervous system, connected directly with his flagship's core, giving him perfect awareness of his entire fleet. Primitive defenses detected. His second-in-command reported, her voice carrying the characteristic metallic resonance of their species. Their orbital platforms are using projectile weapons and crude energy shields. Vexthor's facial plates shifted in what passed for a smile among his kind. Begin the standard extinction protocol. No warnings, no demands. They are unworthy of evolution. The first wave of Keltharian destroyers moved forward, their organic hulls pulsing with stored energy. They had performed this dance countless times, the systematic destruction of a species' defensive capabilities, followed by the methodical cleansing of their population centers. But as they approached Earth's orbit, something changed. Their sensors detected an anomaly. A single ship, emerging from behind Earth's moon. It was smaller than their destroyers, its hull a deep black that seemed to drink in the starlight. No energy signatures, no weapon systems that they could detect, just silence. Supreme Commander, his tactical officer called out, "The vessel is broadcasting a message. Audio only, in galactic standard." "Play it," Vexthor ordered, his curiosity piqued by this lone defender. A human voice, calm and clear, filled the command deck. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the UES Prometheus. You have entered restricted space. The Sol system is under humanity's protection. You have one chance to retreat." Laughter, a rare sound among the Keltharians, echoed through the command deck. One ship against their armada of over 300 vessels. "Destroy it," Vexthor commanded. "Make it quick, but record it for the archives. Let it serve as an example of humanity's final defiance." The destroyers opened fire, their bioplasma weapons lighting up space with deadly beauty. The human ship didn't move, didn't attempt to evade. The plasma struck, and simply vanished, as if absorbed into the vessel's black hull. Vexthor's cybernetic eyes widened. Impossible. The Prometheus's response was immediate and devastating. No energy buildup, no warning. A beam of pure darkness lanced out from the ship, cutting through 3 Keltharian destroyers as if they were made of paper. Their organic hulls didn't explode. They simply ceased to exist where the beam touched them, leaving perfect geometric cuts through their massive forms. By the first evolution, Vexthor whispered, his metallic tendrils twitching with unfamiliar emotion. "What is this technology?" Before he could issue new orders, the Prometheus moved. Not with the conventional drives they were familiar with, but as if space itself was bending around it. It appeared in the midst of their fleet, its black hull now riddled with lines of white light that formed impossible geometric patterns. "Your kind has taken enough lives." Captain Chen's voice came again, still eerily calm. "Humanity refused to build weapons of war until you forced our hand. What you're facing isn't just technology. It's the power of a species that chose peace until you left us no choice. This ship doesn't run on engines or weapons as you understand them. It runs on mathematics that your enhanced minds can't comprehend, on physics that your evolutionary path never discovered." The Prometheus began to spin, slowly at first, then faster, the geometric patterns on its hull shifting and multiplying. Space itself seemed to warp around it, and Vexthor felt something he had never experienced in 300 years of warfare. Fear. "All ships, full retreat." he ordered, but it was too late. The Prometheus released its power, and the fabric of space-time rippled outward like a stone dropped in a pond. 30 Keltharian ships simply vanished, their matter converted to energy and dispersed harmlessly into space. Another 40 found themselves suddenly occupying the same space as their quantum duplicates from parallel universes, their forms merging and separating in ways that defied the laws of physics. In less than 2 minutes, the mighty Keltharian fleet was reduced to a scattered handful of survivors, their perfect neural networks overwhelmed by what they had witnessed. As Vex Thor ordered the remaining ships to retreat, Captain Chen's final message reached them. Remember this day. Remember that humanity chose peace first. Remember that we could have built these weapons millennia ago, but we chose a different path. And remember that if you ever return, what you witnessed today was just the beginning of what we can do. The remaining Keltharian ships flowed into hyperspace, leaving behind a graveyard of impossible destruction. On his command deck, Vex Thor disconnected from his ship's systems for the first time in decades, his metallic tendrils retracting as he tried to process what had happened. They had encountered a species that hadn't just evolved differently. They had evolved better, choosing to understand the universe itself rather than merely dominate it. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Keltharian Empire knew fear. And for the first time, they understood that their path of evolution had led them not to supremacy, but to stagnation. Word of humanity's victory spread through the galaxy like a quantum wave, impossible to contain or control. The Keltharian Empire, for the first time in its history, called an emergency session of its Evolution Council. In their vast chamber of living metal, 12 supreme commanders gathered, their cybernetic implants linking them into a single consciousness. Supreme Commander Vex Thor stood before them, sharing not just his battle recordings, but the raw neural data of his experience. The council chamber fell silent as they witnessed humanity's power through his enhanced senses. Impossible, Supreme Commander Zarkax declared, his metallic tendrils writhing in agitation. No species could have developed such technology in isolation. They must have been aided by the precursors. The precursors are a myth, Vex Thor countered, his voice carrying the weight of his defeat. What we witnessed was something new, something our evolution did not prepare us for. While the Keltharians debated, humanity was not idle. Captain Sarah Chen stood in the quantum observatory of the Prometheus, watching probability streams flow through the ship's core like rivers of light. Her first officer, David Martinez, monitored the ship's mathematics engine, ensuring the quantum calculations remained stable. They're coming back, Sarah said, not as a prediction, but as a mathematical certainty. Our victory scared them, but fear will only make them more dangerous. How many ships? David asked, his hands dancing over the probability interfaces. All of them. The Keltharians had spent a month gathering their forces. 5,000 ships, their entire mobile fleet, assembled at the edge of human space. Their organic hulls had been modified, enhanced with new defenses based on their analysis of the Prometheus's attacks. They believed they had found weaknesses to exploit, countermeasures to deploy. They were wrong. The Keltharian armada emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, their neural networks synchronized for maximum combat efficiency. Supreme Commander Zarkax, now leading the fleet, had modified his own cybernetic systems, pushing them far beyond their design limits. He would not repeat Vex Thor's failure. Multiple human vessels detected, his tactical officer reported. 7 ships, same design as the Prometheus. Zarkax's facial plates shifted in satisfaction. 7 ships against 5,000. The humans had overplayed their hand. Deploy the quantum disruption fields, he ordered. Their space-time manipulation will not work this time. The human ships made no attempt to evade or retreat. Instead, they arranged themselves in a perfect heptagon formation. Captain Chen's voice echoed across all frequencies. You still don't understand. We tried to warn you. What you're about to witness isn't war. It's a lesson in human creativity. The 7 ships began to rotate, their black hulls now glowing with symbols that hurt to look at, mathematical equations that seemed to write themselves into the fabric of reality. The quantum disruption fields the Keltharians had deployed simply dissolve, their carefully engineered countermeasures meaningless against what came next. The human ships weren't just manipulating space-time anymore. They were rewriting it. Full attack. Zarkek screamed, his neural networks burning with the strain of coordinating 5,000 ships. Launch everything. The Keltharian fleet opened fire, unleashing enough firepower to destroy a small star. Bioplasma, quantum torpedoes, dark matter lances, the full fury of their evolution unleashed in a single moment. The attacks never reached their targets. The space between the fleets had ceased to be space as they understood it. The human ships had created what they later called a probability exclusion zone, a region where the laws of physics became more suggestion than rule. The Prometheus led the counterattack. Its hull now blazed with white fire, equations spreading from it like cracks in reality. Each human ship became a focal point for forces the Keltharians couldn't even perceive, let alone combat. Your greatest weakness, Captain Chen transmitted, is believing that evolution only moves in one direction. Humanity evolved to understand, to create, to imagine possibilities beyond the obvious path. The battle that followed wasn't really a battle at all. It was a demonstration. The human ships didn't just destroy the Keltharian fleet. They showed them the fundamental flaws in their understanding of the universe. Ships were divided across multiple probability states, their quantum signatures scattered across dimensions. Others found themselves existing in geometries that shouldn't have been possible, their organic hulls trying to adapt to spaces that violated their basic assumptions about reality. Zarkax watched in horror as his mighty armada was dismantled not by weapons, but by mathematics. His enhanced mind tried to comprehend what he was seeing, but the cybernetic implants that he had believed made him superior simply couldn't process the scale of what humanity had achieved. In the end, 4,000 Keltharian ships simply ceased to exist, their matter and energy redistributed safely across multiple dimensions. The remaining 1,000 were left intact but changed. Their organic technology transformed at the quantum level, rendered harmless, but preserved as a testament to what had occurred. On the Prometheus's bridge, Sarah Chen watched the probability streams settle back into normal patterns. "Send the final message," she ordered. David Martinez activated the quantum comm array one last time. "Your evolution focused on dominance. Ours focused on understanding. You thought the galaxy belonged to the strongest. We learned it belongs to those wise enough to see beyond strength. Go home, rethink your path, and know that if you choose war again, what you witnessed today was still just a fraction of what humanity can achieve." The surviving Keltharian ships retreated, their neural networks carrying not just the memory of defeat, but the fundamental understanding that their entire species had evolved down the wrong path. They had sought to conquer the universe without first learning to truly comprehend it. As the Prometheus and its sister ships maintained their formation at the edge of human space, Sarah Chen knew this wasn't the end. The Keltharians would adapt. It was their nature. But perhaps, just perhaps, they would adapt in a new direction, one that led not to more war, but to understanding. After all, that was the true power of humanity, not the ability to win wars, but the wisdom to show others a better way. In the aftermath of the Battle of Sol's Edge, humanity made a decision that would reshape the galaxy. They would not wait for the Keltharians to return. Instead, they would bring change to them. Deep within the quantum laboratories beneath Mars's surface, Dr. Elena Santos studied the recovered fragments of Keltharian biotechnology. Her team had spent months analyzing the complex neural interfaces that linked their ships and crews into unified fighting forces. "They're trapped," she announced during the emergency council meeting, her hologram flickering before Earth's leaders. The Keltharians modified themselves so extensively for war that they can't conceive of existence without it. Their neural networks don't just enhance their combat capabilities. They've literally rewired their brains for conquest. Captain Sarah Chen, attending virtually from the Prometheus, nodded in understanding. Then we need to show them another way. Not through force, but through demonstration. The plan they devised was unprecedented. The 7 quantum ships would not attack the Keltharian Empire directly. Instead, they would do something far more devastating. They would introduce chaos into their perfect order. The Prometheus emerged in the heart of Keltharian space 3 days later, but not as a warship. Its black hull now rippled with colors that existed only in mathematical space, projecting quantum fields that didn't destroy. They transformed. Supreme Commander Zarkax, still reeling from his defeat at Sol's Edge, watched in horror as the human ship appeared simultaneously in 50 different star systems. Not copies or projections, but the same ship existing in multiple spaces at once, defying everything the Keltharians thought they knew about reality. "What are they doing?" his advisors asked, their neural networks struggling to process the impossible sensor readings. The answer came not in weapons fire, but in waves of quantum manipulation that swept through Keltharian space. Wherever these waves touched their bioengineered technology, changes followed. Neural networks began experiencing something they had never been programmed to handle: creativity. Keltharian ships across 50 systems suddenly found their crews experiencing independent thoughts, their perfectly synchronized minds fragmenting into individual consciousness. Some panicked. Others, for the first time in generations, began to question. "This is not an attack," Captain Chen's message echoed through their quantum communications. "This is liberation. Your evolution trapped you in a cycle of conquest. We're showing you there are other paths." The effect was catastrophic to the Keltharian command structure. Ships began breaking formation, their crews experiencing individual desires and thoughts for the first time. Some fled. Others simply stopped, their crews overwhelmed by their first taste of true free will. On the Keltharian throne world of Zarkax Prime, chaos erupted. The Evolution Council found their neural links corrupted not by violence, but by the introduction of something their systems had been designed to eliminate: possibility. Dr. Santos's voice joined Captain Chen's broadcast. "Your biotechnology is magnificent, but you used it to enforce uniformity. We've simply introduced a quantum variance, a seed of change that allows for individual growth. Your neural networks now have the capacity for something new: choice." The Prometheus continued its work, system by system. Where the Keltharians expected destruction, they found transformation. Their quantum-enhanced sensors detected no weapons, no attacks. Instead, they watched as their carefully constructed hierarchy began to unravel not through force, but through the simple introduction of free will. Some Keltharian commanders, their minds newly awakened to possibility, began to question centuries of conquest. Others, terrified of change, tried to maintain control through force. But their weapons, designed to fight external enemies, proved useless against this internal revolution. Sarah Chen watched from the Prometheus's quantum observatory as probability streams showed the cascade of changes rippling through Keltharian space. "They're reaching the critical point," she told her crew. "Their society will either evolve or collapse." The response came from an unexpected source. A young Keltharian scientist, her neural implants now freed from central control, managed to establish direct communication with the Prometheus. "We understand now," she transmitted, her voice carrying both fear and wonder. "Our evolution wasn't progress, it was stagnation. We replaced growth with control, innovation with conquest. What you've done, you've given us back our ability to change." But not all Keltharians welcomed this awakening. Deep in their core systems, Supreme Commander Zarkax and his loyalists began implementing emergency protocols. If they couldn't maintain control through their neural networks, they would do it through force. As civil war erupted across Keltharian space, humanity faced a new choice. They had succeeded in breaking the cycle of conquest, but at what cost? The quantum transformation they had introduced couldn't be reversed. The Keltharian Empire would never be the same. Sarah Chen sent one final message before the Prometheus prepared to return to human space. Your future is now your own. Your neural networks no longer enforce uniformity. They can now support diversity. What you become is up to you. We'll be watching, ready to help those who choose to grow, ready to defend against those who cling to conquest. As the Prometheus disappeared into quantum space, it left behind a changed empire. The Keltharians had begun their greatest evolution, not of body or technology, but of mind and purpose. The age of uniform conquest was over. The age of individual choice had begun. The fracturing of the Keltharian Empire began not with a bang, but with a question. In the chambers of the Evolution Council, a junior member named Ixel stood before her superiors, her neural tendrils disconnected from the network. A gesture that would have been unthinkable mere months ago. Why? She asked simply. Why must evolution mean conquest? The council chamber erupted in chaos. Some members activated their combat protocols, their cybernetic implants humming with deadly intent. Others sat in stunned silence, their own neural networks wrestling with concepts they had never been programmed to consider. Supreme Commander Zarkax, watching from his fortress on Zarkax Prime, recognized the moment for what it was, the beginning of the end. In human space, the Prometheus's quantum sensors detected the growing instability. Captain Sarah Chen and her crew monitored probability streams that showed the Keltharian Empire splintering into distinct factions. Dr. Elena Santos, now aboard as Chief Science Officer, analyzed the data with growing concern. 3 main groups are forming, she reported, gesturing at the quantum probability display. The traditionalists under Zarkax, who want to purge the changes we introduced. The evolutionaries, led by that young scientist who contacted us, pushing for complete transformation. And the synthesists, trying to find a middle path. Sarah nodded, watching the streams of possibility branch and interconnect. And the subjected species, the ones they conquered. That's where it gets interesting, Elena replied, pulling up new data streams. The quantum variants we introduced didn't just affect the Keltharians. Their entire biotech network is adapting, including the control systems they used on their subjugated worlds. Across Keltharian space, revolution bloomed like quantum flowers. Species that had lived under their control for generations found their restraints weakening, their own technological interfaces transforming. The Merid, a crystalline species known for their computational abilities, were the first to break free. The Volari, energy beings who had been forced to power Keltharian war machines, surged from their containment fields. But it was the Keltharians themselves who faced the greatest turmoil. Young officers removed their neural limiters, experiencing unfiltered reality for the first time. Scientists, their minds freed from the constraints of military doctrine, began exploring new directions in biotechnology. Some Keltharian ships, their organic components evolving beyond their original programming, developed genuine sentience. Supreme Commander Zarkax watched his empire crumble with cold fury. In his fortress, he gathered those who still believed in the old ways. Our evolution made us strong, he declared to his followers. These changes are a disease, and we must burn them out. His response was swift and brutal. Traditionalist forces attacked worlds that showed signs of transformation, using weapons designed to purge the quantum variants. But each attack only spread the changes faster, as destroyed biotech released its evolved components into the quantum fabric of space itself. The synthesists, led by veteran Commander Threshva, established themselves in the mid-rim systems. They worked to stabilize the chaos, developing new neural interfaces that preserved Keltharian unity while allowing for individual growth. Their ships, still organic but now symbiotically linked to their crews rather than controlling them, became living examples of their philosophy. But it was the evolutionaries who truly embraced transformation. Under the leadership of the scientist who had first contacted humanity, now known as First Speaker Ixel, they began implementing changes that would have been unthinkable months ago. Their worlds became living laboratories where biology and technology merged in new ways, guided by creativity rather than conquest. The Prometheus watched it all, maintaining its position at the edge of the conflict. Sarah Chen knew that direct intervention would only make things worse. This was a change that had to come from within. Then came the transmission that changed everything. A joint message from the synthesists and evolutionaries, broadcast on frequencies that reached both human space and the deepest parts of the former empire. We understand now what humanity tried to teach us. Evolution isn't about becoming stronger than others. It's about becoming stronger than ourselves. We've lived for thousands of years believing we were the peak of advancement, only to discover we had trapped ourselves in a prison of our own making. The message continued, carrying with it quantum packets of data that showed their progress. Worlds being transformed, species being freed, new technologies being developed that worked in harmony with the universe rather than trying to dominate it. But Zarkax was not finished. In his fortress, he had gathered not just followers, but weapons, the last remnants of the old empire's war machine, enhanced with desperate modifications that threatened to tear reality apart. If we cannot rule, he declared to his loyal commanders, then let the galaxy burn. We will show humanity and these traitors the true meaning of evolution, survive or perish. As his forces prepared for one final assault, probability streams across the Prometheus's quantum observatory blazed with warning. The next phase of the conflict would not be about transformation or philosophy. It would be a desperate battle for survival, with the fate of not just the Keltharian species, but countless others hanging in the balance. Sarah Chen looked at her crew, seeing in their eyes the same understanding. They had started this change, and now they would have to see it through. But this time, they wouldn't be alone. The transformed Keltharians and their freed allies were ready to fight for their new future. The final battle for the soul of an empire was about to begin. Supreme Commander Zarkax's final weapon was an abomination of science and desperation. In the depths of his fortress, he had created what his scientists called a neural singularity, a device that would broadcast his unchanged neural patterns across all of Keltharian space, forcing every piece of their biotechnology to revert to its original, conquest-driven state. The human quantum ships detected the weapon's activation too late. Reality itself screamed as the device powered up, sending waves of corrupted neural energy through the quantum substrate that connected all Keltharian technology. Ships in mid-flight suddenly turned on their crews. Neural implants began overriding their host's newly discovered individuality. This is how evolution should be. Zarkax broadcast across all frequencies. The strong survive. The weak perish. The universe will learn this truth or burn with us. Aboard the Prometheus, Sarah Chen watched probability streams collapse one by one as the neural singularity's influence spread. We didn't just change their technology, she realized, horror dawning in her eyes. We changed the quantum foundation of their entire civilization. If Zarkax corrupts that foundation, the death toll would be incalculable. Elena Santos finished, her hands flying over the quantum interfaces. Every piece of Keltharian biotech, every neural implant, every organic ship, they're all connected. He's trying to force everything back to its original state, but the evolution we triggered has gone too far. The contradiction will tear their civilization apart. But in this darkest moment, humanity witnessed something extraordinary. First Speaker Ixel, leading the evolutionary faction, did not retreat. Instead, she broadcast her own message, not just through conventional channels, but through the quantum networks that connected all Keltharian technology. We are not what we were. Evolution is not a return to the past. It is an embrace of the future. You cannot force us back into our cage, Zarkax. We have learned to fly. Across Keltharian space, individuals began resisting the neural singularity not through force, but through choice. The quantum variance humanity had introduced had done more than just change their technology. It had changed their fundamental understanding of existence. Sarah Chen made her decision. All ships prepare for quantum synchronization, she ordered. The 7 human vessels moved into formation, their black hulls blazing with mathematical fire. We're not going to fight this wave. We're going to redirect it. The Prometheus led the human fleet not in an attack, but in a dance of physics and probability. Their quantum fields reached out, not to destroy the neural singularity, but to transform its energy. Where Zarkax sought to impose the past, they created channels for the future. The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. It was not fought with weapons, but with ideas. Not with force, but with possibility. The human ships became conduits, taking the massive energy of Zarkax's weapon and feeding it into the quantum variants they had created, amplifying change rather than reversing it. In his fortress, Zarkax watched in disbelief as his ultimate weapon became the catalyst not for regression, but for the greatest transformation yet. The neural singularity's energy, redirected through human quantum fields and guided by the collective will of billions of newly awakened minds, swept through Keltharian space like a cleansing fire. Ships that had begun to turn on their crews became true partners, their organic components achieving a genuine symbiosis with their pilots. Neural implants, instead of enforcing control, became bridges to understanding. The very fabric of Keltharian civilization transformed, not by force, but by choice. The end came not with destruction, but with enlightenment. Zarkax's fortress, the last bastion of the old empire, was not destroyed. Instead, it was transformed, its quantum signature altered so fundamentally that it became a living memorial, a reminder of what they had been and what they had chosen not to remain. In the aftermath, as the probability streams stabilized and the quantum dust settled, the galaxy witnessed the birth of something entirely new. The Keltharian civilization had not just survived, it had transcended. Their technology, once used to enforce uniformity, now celebrated diversity. Their neural networks, once tools of control, became instruments of connection and understanding. First Speaker Ixal, standing before the combined council of all factions, even the surviving traditionalists who had laid down their weapons, spoke the words that would define their new era. Humanity did not defeat us. They did not conquer us. They showed us that true evolution is not about becoming stronger than others. It is about becoming wise enough to grow beyond the need for strength alone. We are no longer an empire of conquest. We are becoming an empire of understanding. The Prometheus prepared to return home, its mission finally complete. But before they left, Sarah Chen received one final transmission from the transformed Keltharian civilization. It was not a message of thanks or a declaration of peace. It was an invitation. You showed us a new path. Now let us walk it together. Not as conquerors and conquered, not as teachers and students, but as fellow travelers in the greatest journey of all, the journey of becoming more than we are. As the human ships disappeared into quantum space, they left behind not a defeated enemy, but a transformed civilization. The galaxy would never be the same, and that was exactly as it should be. For in the end, humanity's greatest victory was not in winning a war, but in showing that the greatest power in the universe was not the ability to destroy or control, but the wisdom to choose a better way. The Keltharian Empire was gone. In its place stood something far greater, a civilization that had learned the true meaning of evolution, the courage to change, the wisdom to grow, and the strength to become something more than conquest had ever allowed them to be.